Be live in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am in my patio in my vacation house, and it is raining cats and dogs and even thundering right now. And I am here with David, who was part of the Danish WTC team this year round in Cork. You were part of the team B, right?
Denmark 2, I think, was the correct
Denmark
term.
2 was the official title, yes.
Yes.
David is also part of the basement club where I play and is a very, very proficient painter.
Thank you.
It's
I'm happy
like
you think so.
our great hope of ever winning and maybe ousting Alistair from the painting contests.
I don't think that'll ever happen. He has his roots firmly planted in that spot.
Yes, yes. Um, Today we're going to talk about multiple small units, MSU. And the reason why I brought David on is because somebody noted down that your list was a bit MSU-like, that you had many small units. And we did see quite a lot of MSU at the WTC. So could you just talk us through what was your list, and then we'll start. We have a whole schedule.
Yeah, of course. So I brought a 14 order dice list, US, of course. That is my main army at the moment. And it consisted of only a single platoon. And it had, of course, an experienced second lieutenant. And it had three veteran engineer teams with flamethrowers with matching.
3 of those.
Yes, with matching Dodge trucks. And I had a bazooka with a jeep to give me some kind of push or at least staying power in terms of some of the armor that I would meet. It actually turned out that it never did anything, but that's the way it goes with bazooka teams. But it pulled a lot of firepower. I had a veteran sniper, regular sniper, perhaps a regular sniper. I think regular sniper. I had a medium mortar, and I had a Sherman 105 millimeter.
So how it's Sherman.
Yes, which did very well. And then I had a Dakar Jeep with outrigger because it's not allowed when it's armies off own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the army list. And
sorry, I actually also had two 8-man squads of regular infantry with 2 BARs to round it off.
So
on foot.
For me, at least, hearing your army list here, you had 2 units of infantry that were not minimum sized, and 1 tank that you can't say is like you're spending a lot of points when you're buying a Sherman. Right?
No, it's a cheap Sherman. No, an M4 105 millimeter is 175 points.
Yeah, everything that's above 150 for me is very expensive. So, yeah, well,
not compared to how much grievance it gives everybody that needs it.
Yeah, true. But that meant that you did have quite a lot of teams. You did have quite a lot of small infantry units as well, and a lot of transports in the list as well. So very mobile and very compact.
Yes. Definitely.
Right.
Lots of tools.
Lots of tools. So, in your view, what is MSU? What is multiple small units for you?
Well, for me, it's I guess it's a maximum of 5 infantry in one platoon or in one dice, and I would say 5
always take all the infantry choices.
Yes. So exactly. So you max it out, and it should also be a maximum of 5 people in each of those. I think even 5 is actually on the high end if you want to do MSU. If you want to do true MSU, in my opinion, it's you have to do dual platoon and then 10 choices. Yeah. But then you would be hard pressed to do 5-man choices for each of those 10.
Alone on the points, that would be really difficult, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. And then it becomes a matter of, is it even possible to build that in the armies off only? And I don't think it is.
No.
You would have to open up for using the allowed in generic platoons from selectors. to be able to build a full 10-man MSU that also makes sense in some way, I think.
And then we're at what we saw Anders Gerfeldt do at the
Exactly.
Danish Nationals, which
Yeah.
was an army consisting of all small teams.
Yeah.
Every single infantry choice was a two-man veteran team. Brilliantly done, by the way, really good, and very MSU.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you. That is what you're looking for in MSU. The optimization of your dice choices, and there are several reasons to do this, right? Because you can do it to increase the number of order dice you have.
Yeah.
But you can also do it to increase the amount of units you have, because each unit puts out pins. So that's also a thing.
Exactly. So yeah. Exactly. I think
Well, we're
maybe
going to talk about. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, I was about to say, I think maybe the British can actually do something similar if they run a commando or a SAS platoon.
Yes. The SAS platoons, especially the theater platoons, can have very small SAS groups.
And they are quite hardcore.
They are very, very hardcore and very difficult to kill, which is also one of the things that we're going to talk about. How do you think we were able to see this concept of the MSU at the WTC? Did you notice many lists that had this?
No, I didn't play a single one that had anything even close to that. All the lists I met had 8+ men in each infantry group, unless it was a specific engineer platoon, engineer group with a flamer in. Then it's of course 5-man to optimize.
Yes.
I didn't play any Russians because some of the Russians usually do more than 5 because they get body armor and then it's a huge death star kind of thing. But no, I didn't play a single one, so I actually didn't meet anybody.
The closest thing that I encountered were some of the guys running single platoons who had the full complement of mortar and sniper and flamethrower and bazooka, whatever, like all the small choices that they could take, every single one they had. That was the closest that I feel like I got to it, because most people were bringing larger units of infantry.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, the team choices, the special weapon team choices, are not necessarily MSU. I know that they consist of few men, but they also represent a tool in a different way than an infantry unit is, at least in my opinion.
Yes, true. So in your view, are there any units that are like must-haves in MSU if you're doing proper MSU? Because you still need to have some sort of combat power, right?
Yeah, so for me, you need to have some kind of armor to balance out many small units that don't have killy power necessarily, but have pin power. So you need something that can instantly kill the enemy. So it either be armor choice, but it could also be artillery choice. A medium howitzer is one of my favorite artilleries or choices in general. I think it's a brilliant choice to round off anything, basically, because it has the opportunity to lock down a sector with direct fire and still also perform if you have a spotter with a direct fire.
Yeah. And since you're doing the min-maxing of the old bad Warhammer 40K days, I mean, you have the points to buy something heavy and nasty that can really
definitely. Yes, definitely. Easily, actually. And even when you're running a dual platoon, you can easily afford 2 pieces of armor if you choose. And you might also, as a Brit, be able to perhaps run 1 or even 2 armored cars on top. So you actually have 4
that would mean
choices.
Up to 4 armored choices.
Especially if you choose something that's not open topped, because they're generally I mean, they're not that expensive, but they're of course up there. But if you
bad, right?
So exactly.
So where do you think this idea comes from of MSUs? When did you encounter it the first time?
I actually encountered it playing our all beloved Benny, the Cheese Master. My very first game ever, which was about a year ago, year and a couple of months ago, where I played him. He was playing his French list.
I
believe
remember that one. 24 order dice or something insane.
It was my
like
very first game. I brought a 10 dice American list, which had M10 and some regular infantry, and that was it, you know. And I think I brought a mortar and a sniper, perhaps. And I met his list. At the time, it was only, I think, 18 dice. Later, he reworked the French list to be 21 dice, which I met at the very first tournament I went to. Yeah. But that 18 dice list had these 5-man sugar units inside these closed top transports with LMGs. Yeah. And he tore me to shreds. Completely obliterated my army. So that was my first real game of bolt action. Thank you, Benny.
Oh yes. For those who don't know, Benny has been one of the WTC players. I brought him both to Poland and to Cork. And he has a reputation for making the cheesiest lists in Denmark. He's also our very own list checker. He has all the books and he's really good at checking lists. But he does like his horde armies.
He does. He is a master at hordes, I would say.
Yeah. And we can usually tell when Benny has made an army because the order dice will typically be from 16 order dice and up. Never below 16 order dice.
No, 16 is bare minimum.
Yeah. And is that also what you were aiming for when you sort of copied some of his ideas and then made them into your own? What was it that you were aiming for order dice wise?
I actually didn't try to copy Benny because I know I don't think that playstyle will fit me as such.
No, just the idea of
the idea size. No, that was actually more. I was more looking towards a mixture of having the right tools and also having the amount of flamers necessary to be a threat. Yeah. And of course putting them in Dutch trucks so that they are mobile and can possibly swing up and do something. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I also had a multi-rocket launcher in the list.
Yeah, there we go. The land.
So throughout all 6 games, I managed to hit once.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, it was I had a few shots that missed, but generally it was just a pin magnet. People were so scared of it. It was insane to a degree where some of the best players in the world used too much focus on one MRLS. It was kind of
shooting it all the time.
Or what? They used multiple dice every turn to try and kill it. They ended up pinning it a lot, and it never did anything because
it simply just went down as soon as
I went down every time they shot at it, and if they didn't shoot it, I tried to rally, whatever. So we barely got any shots off, but some of the best players in the world spend way too much time on them. It was amazing.
That is worth every
completely 38 points I think I paid for it, and that definitely gave me an advantage in some games.
That is what you can do with something that seems very scary, but in reality maybe isn't.
Oh, I fucking hate sorry, I cursed. I hate multi-rocket launchers. I think they're so boring to play with and against. For me, they can be written out of the game.
They are boring. I agree. Right, but they are a good tool if you want to win games. Like 1 is a good tool. 5 is maybe too much.
I'd rather
pull with. Anyways,
I'd rather do something else with my points, if honest.
So before we talk about which nations can do this, do you think that the real way to run MSUs is to run it as a flamer fleet?
No. I think that's just one possibility. I think that's in the current accessibility for a WTC list. That's what you can do as an American player. If you want to run a different kind of MSU list, you need to go to another nation because that's the only choice you get at the moment playing armies off only.
Right. Then let's talk about what you can do with which nations. So Americans, you can sort of go engineer spam because you get the regular engineers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you get the cheap dodges, which fits exactly with the engineer size. So everything is sort of it sort of blends together in a perfect mix.
Yeah.
Where other choices like the Sherman howitzer or a Darker Stewart or other choices can sort of be your killy stuff, right?
Exactly.
At range.
Yes.
What other nations do you see can do similar stuff?
Well, I mean, I already mentioned the French.
Yeah.
So basically anyone that can take small units of very cheap infantry. So the French can do shirkers. The Germans can actually do shirkers.
Yes.
I believe the
Russians.
The Russians can do shirkers as well. So these shirker units may be trash as hell, but they only need one to hit. It doesn't matter if they kill. They just need to put the pin.
Yeah.
And if they have 10 times 5 shots from 5 shirkers, that's some of it is bound to hit no matter what.
It is. Do you think that with these, if you're running it as shirker, because the Russians can also actually run the flamer version where you get the regular engineers, do you think if you're running shirkers, Strafbat units or whatever, that you need them to be in some sort of transport as well?
I think that really depends on your playstyle and at what you build up around that list of MSUs. Because if you build up a German kind of defense force, I don't think you need transport for your shirkers. They just need to hang back and shoot at anything that gets too close, and let the rest of the tools do the work. But if you want to have kind of an aggressive list, like Benny did with this French list that I talked about, then you definitely need some kind of transport. And the problem is not many countries or nations can get a transport that's worthy, so to speak, like the French can.
So the French have got the Barillet, which is, for those who don't know it, it is an armored transport and it is closed-topped. It's the only transport in my understanding. I think it's the only one that is actually closed-topped and armored at the same time, and has an LMG. So it's basically a movable mini tank, right?
It's
7+ armor. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
The other vehicle that really benefits from having a unit of shirkers sitting in it is, of course, the Bren carrier.
Exactly.
Of the Russians and the British. I don't think the Germans can have sort of the same, which means that many builds of Germans, you will often see the shirker units on foot. Like you said, the defensive list where they're used as order dice.
Yeah.
So, but if you're using them to keep transports alive, say hi to the girlfriend.
Thank you.
Right. If you're using them to keep transports alive, then it's a whole nother ball game,
Completely.
right?
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said, and I know you think it's very expensive, but there's something to be said putting a bunch of shirkers in a armor transport, be it a Sonderkampfwagen, Sonderkraftfahrzeug, or a Dodge or a white car, American white car,
white scout
with upgraded LMGs all over. I mean, that thing is a beast.
It is.
All of a sudden.
Although it quite easily dies, but I am playing around myself in non-competitive lists with the all famous LVT, which also has a transport capacity of 30 guys, right? And it has 3 machine guns with the possibility of putting an autocannon on it as well. So like that idea of having something armored that has a lot of machine guns, has a lot of shots coming out of it, maybe even something with a plus pen.
Exactly.
Like you can get on the Bren carrier. It's really, really strong. And you can get that in these nations. What do you think about minor nations? I've been seeing a lot, maybe because Kaspar, he's sending me lists with Greeks, also with multiple small units. He has a lot of 5-man units in his lists. Do you think you can do this with minor nations as well?
Of course you can. I mean, if you can build a sensible list with 5-man units, yes. But for me, MSU is smaller than 5-man. I think my 5-man is stretching it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know I ran 5 men in mine.
Yeah.
for the WTC, but I wasn't going for a straight up MSU list. But minor nations usually have some kind of other good thing going for them, and I don't think it's MSU necessarily. If we look at the polls, it's
the cavalry,
it's the Lancers, right?
Yeah.
The Romanians is that they get
the Romanians get an
artillery.
extra piece of artillery, plus you can actually take one more because they get German allies. So
exactly,
so you can end up with quite a lot of artillery when you're playing Romanians. Yeah,
exactly. Which of course could lend itself for a good MSU list, but I'm not entirely sure what kind of infantry they can actually choose.
Romanians, that's a lot of regular infantry. You can't get the shirkers, so it's not the same.
No.
Yeah.
And no, I mean the Finns definitely not, right?
No, you should never do that with Finns. The only, I mean, so what we're building here is, if you're going with flamethrowers, go regular flamethrowers, regular engineers. If you're going with just 5-man infantry units, then buy them as cheaply as possible. Go shirkers, go Strafbat, go everything. Cut down. If you can throw away their weapons, do that as well, right? As long as there's one rifle, that's a pin.
Yes, exactly.
So cut down on costs, because then they just become the order dice or the keeping alive of a transport that's a lot better than themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. So, in your view, have we covered the benefits of MSU here?
No, not yet.
Yeah. Oh, let's talk about it then.
There's a few things left, I think. The auto dice control and the pins we've talked about. We haven't talked about the ability to have so many units to contest points.
Oh, yes.
Because having one unit that can sit and go down is only as good as the next mortar shot that hits.
Yes, because that will happen.
Yeah, at some point, or a howitzer shot, or a Dagger Steward that unloads 18 shots.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's a 12-man veteran unit, that unit is probably gone.
Yeah.
From one of those hits, right? Some of like a Russian free squad might still survive it, but it'll be severely pinned out, and it won't be fun for it.
No, and then having
these MSUs, you have to choose one to shoot at, but there might be 3 different contesting it, and if it's a true MSU, it might also be a small team, and it's veteran. You're never gonna get
down that. And they're in hard cover. You're never gonna hit it. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
So
if you hit one, there's still 2 left.
Yeah. So contesting, would you say that if you're running key positions, for instance, an objective mission, would you try to run several units towards the same objective?
Definitely. I would try to get 1 or 2 on it early to sit and go down, and then I would have 1 or 2 in reserve to run up and do anything. If the first 2 gets completely wiped out by complete luck, because that happens, or a multi-rocket launcher gets them both, or something stupid like that, I would have something in reserve to push up to that. And since I have, if it's a really like dice heavy MSU list, I will probably have 10 infantry squads. Ooh. I can cover at least 3 or 4 of the objectives with multiple teams.
You can, yes.
Yeah. While still having all my tools to try and pull out the enemy and
would that mean that when you were playing this list, would you spend a lot of time just wasting dice on small units, just going on ambush or going down at the start of the turn, or how would you actually play that?
I mean, depending on the specific of that turn, because it might also be that I spent a lot of my dice on putting pins on the stuff that I know is critical for him to do something with. And getting those 2 pins on any unit, even if it's a veteran, it's enough for him to
fail the order test and
or risk the order test, and then possibly fail, or force him to do a rally, which buys me a turn.
Even if he shoots, then 2 pins will mean he's shooting at -1. So
he's shooting at -1. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you're a small team anyways, and
small team, some kind of cover, might even go down.
Yeah.
Long range, possibly.
Okay. So you would actually start by figuring out what do I need to pin?
Yeah. Do I need to wait for him to come to me? Because then I will go on ambush.
Yeah.
Do I need to pin something out that is critical for him to do? Then I will start putting pins on him.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then at the end, would you, like late game, would you be sitting with like 1 or 2 teams near each objective, waiting to go onto that objective, or how would you play that?
If I'm not already controlling it, then yes, definitely. If I can see I'm already controlling one objective, I think I would repurpose that squad to something else, unless he has something that hasn't come on yet that can surprise me, or he's threatening me with some kind of transport. I might use that unit to try and block him. So I will move it aggressively forward and then go down if he shoots at me in future turns.
Like
try
basically
to block the
daring him
axis.
to kill it.
Daring him to come forward, or even
distract.
just distract him. But it is also a matter of standing in the way so he can get a straight line either with the transport or with the units inside the transport. So he would have to run around, which means he possibly can't even get to the point.
Perfect. So let's just finish up here. So contesting is a very good idea and something that you can do because you have so many units.
Yeah.
Pins. We already talked a bit about pins. Having multiple units means that you typically can get 1 or 2 pins on each of the enemy units that are critical.
Exactly.
Right. And are you vulnerable to pins yourself?
No, I mean everybody's always vulnerable to pins in some regard, but if I have 10 infantry squads plus different types of tools plus some armor, I might get 2/3 pinned, but I still have 1/3 to work with. So all of a sudden, so even if he uses everything to pin mine, I still have my tools to work with in some fashion or other.
So just the redundancy of having that many units actually means that you're not that vulnerable to pins. Even if you fail the order test, you can still sort of move.
I will probably have something else that can then back me up at some point.
Yeah. When do you feel that you sort of gain the order dice control? Because order dice control, oh, by the way, maybe we should explain this. Order dice control is you sort of have that many dice in the bag compared to the opponent that you can sort of more or less be sure of whether you're getting the first and or the last die, which is typically the ones that are the most important for this. So when do you feel, when is that tipping point for you?
I mean, most of the lists that we see, if we exclude horde lists, because horde lists go up to 20, 21, 22 order dice.
And they typically have that order dice control from the get-go because
definitely
just that many dice in the bag, right?
Yes, but if we look at regular lists, even dual platoon regular lists, they have somewhere between 13 and 15 at the most, usually. 14 being the sweet spot, and you've talked about this in many of your other videos.
I have, yeah.
So to gain that advantage, I would say you need at least 16.
Okay.
But that's the very least. I would be comfortable at 18.
Okay.
Because 18 is 4 above the average and 3 above the max of regular lists.
And then you can start doing the shenanigans with betting on getting the first order dice next turn or whatever, and throwing up dangerous engineers or bazooka, whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or the armor.
Or the armor. Yes. Because that is
having that armor just sitting there and waiting is always a problem for the opponent, right? Because they want to see what you do. They want to be able to react to your armor. But since you have the control, you get to choose when to go with the armor.
Yeah.
And that's usually as the last dice or last 2 dice of the turn.
And if you're even luckier, so you get the last 2 dice, and then you're sitting next turn, but you're already up 4, and then you get double turns with that armor. So 2 turns before the enemy has a chance to even try and stop you. That's brilliant. So that is the order dice control that you actually can get from multiple small units. I would say there's one thing more you can do with multiple small units, and that is order dice stacking. So if you're buying something very expensive, if you're running a Tiger or whatever, right, and you need extra order dice because your list is that low and the enemy has the order dice control because you're running 9 order dice. One of the things you can do is simply crap on your infantry, make it all like very small units of 5-man shirkers, and then you get a lot more order dice just to have that slight control of.
So you can actually start to use your tiger.
Yes. It is not a good idea to do that. I would never recommend anyone.
Yes, it's a very good idea. Bring that to the next WCC, everybody.
Yes, everyone will love you for it. They'll all love you for it. You won't win any games, but they'll love you. So competitively, don't ever do that. But it's something that you can do, and we have seen that done with some lists at times where somebody brings like maybe one of those huge KV tanks for the Russians, or a tiger, or whatever, right?
Yeah, actually, we saw it. I think one of the things that I heard about, I didn't play against the list. It was some of the German squads that brought 2 armors. One of them being a dual Kugelblitz, right? You played that.
I played against the dual Kugelblitz, and Uwe, my opponent there, had a lot of small units.
Yeah.
He had like 2 medium mortars, I think, 2 howling cows, the Wolfgrats.
Yeah.
And then he had like shirkers, Strafbat units. He even had 1 Strafbat unit that was big, actually. That was like a 10-man unit, which I didn't get the idea of. But all of that was just feeding order dice into his Kugelblitz, which was killing my whole army. It was the only thing that actually killed anything, but those Kugelblitzes, they were just killing 1 unit each turn.
Yeah.
As clockwork. They were really, really deadly. So yeah. So that is what you can do if you have if you want to have the order dice and kill stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I mean, a full squad Strafbad.
Yeah.
Is kind of interesting though.
Yeah, but then it's definitely not MSU anymore. Then we're talking about
it's not
something we've seen.
Not, instead of
Spanish
many
and
small
German
units,
players.
it's many crap units.
Yes.
And
cheap units.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the idea because, and I know that I've played against Benny doing this. Yeah. It works in its own way, especially because the full squad buff just helps the shirkers just a little bit more to give them just a little bit more competitiveness.
Yeah, it does, because you roll twice.
You get to re-roll your.
And they're even better as outflankers, actually, because you get to roll twice because you're full strength and coming on from the outflank. Yeah. But then again, we're min-maxing. Then we're in the max end. We're talking min here. So, but that is another talk. Yes.
But how much is a full strength shirker squad? It's dirt cheap still.
Dirt cheap. Yeah, dirt cheap. I think you get it for 70 points or something. It's really cheap. Maybe even lower. It's not a lot of points. It's really not.
That's a lot of rifle shots.
Yeah, it is. Right. So the benefits, we've talked about those now, but we haven't talked about the idea that most of your army becomes small team. They also become survivable when you are running multiple small units, don't they?
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting angle to this as well, because I've been talking, like the last month or so, I've been talking and thinking a lot about not having small teams, especially with my lieutenants, maybe running them as 3-man teams, because you get 3 SMGs.
It's a small regular. It's actually an assault team all of a sudden.
It's a small assault team, right? Mm. But you lose the small team bonus, which is something that normally we would always recommend keeping, just because that -1 it helps. How do you feel that works? Because you're running 5-man infantry units, which is what most small units of infantry will be, even though you can get some that are better. What do you think about that small team bonus?
I think that's. I think yes. In my, it depends what the goal of the many small unit list is, because if it's not going for lots of pins, so you kind of lock the opponent down, but more having something killy in a small form, then there's no need to go for the small team bonus.
Okay.
because then you more need survivability.
Yeah.
Because you will get shot at. The small team bonus is a huge plus if the point is to have so much that your opponent needs to choose what to shoot at, and then because you have the order dice control, you can choose also to go down. So it's down, it's small team, it's possibly some cover, it's possibly some range. It will almost always be 9 possible shots.
Yeah.
And if they then hit, it could also be that they're veterans.
Yeah. Does that mean that would you prefer a regular flamethrower team or a regular engineer unit? Which is better in your view?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think just for not thinking about an MSU list, I will go for the engineer team because it has more survivability. It's not vulnerable to Heartsy at the beginning of turn. The forward preparatory bombardment. That's the name.
Yeah.
And you can lose 2 guys before it
really starts hurting. Yeah.
Exactly. But if I'm thinking about MSU as kind of the concept of having lots of small things that control support, having many order dice, there's something to be said about a flamer team.
Yeah.
Simply because it's a 2-man unit that you can have anywhere on the board if you put it in a Jeep, right?
Yeah.
And a Jeep is so much cheaper than putting it in a truck. I mean, a 5-man unit, yes, you can put it in a truck, but it's twice as expensive as a Jeep.
Yeah.
The problem will always be that if that flamer runs out, you lose the dice.
Yeah.
And you don't do that with an engineer team.
So slight advantage to the engineer team on that score, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So if I do want to run multiple flamers, it would be regular engineer teams.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. Even though there are points to be saved on the flamer team. Yeah.
Yes, there is. Definitely, yes, because that I roll a lot of ones.
Yeah.
In any game.
Yeah.
I roll a lot of ones, and you know this.
Yes, I do.
You've seen my ones.
Yes,
I always lose. If I have multiple flamers, I usually lose
to the viewers, David is chronically pursued by bad dice.
Yes.
Right.
Which means if I am to choose from my list,
you want something that even though you run out, it still survives.
I still have 4 men with rifles.
Yeah. And that's even though you're not pursued by bad luck, it's still good advice, right? Because it still means that on average that unit will survive running out of the flamethrower fuel, and they can still do stuff. They can go down on objectives or keep your Dodge trucks alive or whatever. Yeah.
But I think if I was to run like the idea of a pure many small units list, I think I would go with the flavor team simply because it would save me the points towards my heavy tools being a tank or many artillery pieces or some stuff like that.
Right. Cool.
And still being able to sit with 10 infantry teams on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one thing that we haven't really discussed yet, and this is sort of a pro play. This is when the enemy comes with something that's really, really scary, a Death Star type of unit, like a large unit of Lancers or 8 to 10 man Gurkhas or body armor assault engineers for the Russians.
Yeah.
So how does MSU deal with that stuff?
I mean, the obvious answer we've talked about is putting pins on the threat, right?
Yeah.
So you have the opportunity at some point to be first because you have the auto dice control, especially if they're running Death Stars. You definitely have the auto dice control.
Yeah.
So you start putting pins on it, and then, of course, if it's Gurkhas with Up and Atom, pins doesn't really matter. But the other way of control is
the British banzai.
Yeah, completely. But then they get to kill 2 men.
Yeah.
And then I get to react with all my stuff, and you're suddenly a lot closer to me.
So you're basically thinking about feeding a Death Star with what it needs to kill, and then punishing it for that.
Exactly. I mean, as I mentioned at the very start, one of my favorite units is an artillery piece, either a howitzer or a howitzer on a tank.
Yeah.
and I think you learned to respect my tanks that one time.
Oh yes,
You ran too close to my howitzer.
Yes. You shouldn't do that.
No.
No, getting hit by direct fire from a howitzer is bad news for everything.
Yes.
And I mean, even I get the blood rage and just charge forward sometimes and end up in a really bad situation because you're standing. You might kill the small team that you're aiming for,
You definitely
but then
did.
you're standing right in front of a howitzer,
Yes.
which will shoot you and just obliterate your expensive veterans.
And most likely will hit you on a 4.
Yeah.
Which hurts like hell.
Yeah, and especially if you still had the auto dice control, because then you're like not just shooting once, you're shooting twice, right? Because
exactly.
late game, late turn, and then early turn again. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that sucks. So feeding a Death Star is also a thing, but that of
especially
course,
because you can, especially because you can have this response to it, or you can have the pins to it, but you can also really like put the bait out there, right?
Yeah.
Put that unit that's like, oh, I bet I can charge that group and he won't get defensive fire and he'll die.
Yeah.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, definitely
Have
not.
that dice. Have those 2 guys.
Congratulations.
Please. Yes.
You're now ready to die yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
But here we touch upon some of the disadvantages as well, because when you do that, you're losing the order dice. And if you're in a tournament setting where kill points matter, then that can be a bad situation as well, can't it?
Yes.
Of course, you want to trade a Death Star to a small team any day.
But I think this comes down to, I think it was a talking point you had in one of your other videos.
Yeah.
This counting order dice versus who is it that counts? Is it Germany?
Yeah.
That counts the worth, the value of the dice?
In Germany and in Spain, they're also starting to do that, where they're counting the value of the units being destroyed, so the points value, and not just the order dice. In Denmark,
that's really
and I think this we also do that. We do that here in Denmark. Normally, we're counting order dice, and they also do that in the UK. And at the WTC, but I think the other thing is actually really interesting.
It could be interesting to test out. We can do that ourselves, of course.
Yes, of course.
But yes, when you count order dice, the MSU lists have a huge disadvantage in terms of the possibility of feeding the animal, right?
Yeah.
If I have a list of 20, and I might lose 10 dice, and I will probably still win the game pretty big, but I still lost 10 dice.
Yeah. Which will mean that if the dice count is the deciding factor in secondary, then that will mean that quite often in a tournament setting, MSU lists will have a hard time with the kill points.
Unless they completely dominate
everything
and are consecutively at the top. And if they have these tiebreakers, then they will usually lose the tiebreakers.
Yes. And we saw that happen with Anders Gerfeldt at the Danish Nationals, where he had brought a true MSU list. It had all small teams, like we talked about earlier, and he dominated most of his games, except when he ran up against something which he couldn't pin out or kill, me. And then he just went down for a whole game. It was brilliant, the most brilliant draw I've ever played against any player, because it was really difficult to get him to die, actually. So he was really good at actually keeping his stuff alive. But had I got into him for real, he would have lost on kill points. I happened to win the tournament on other kill points throughout the tournament because his kill points wasn't that good. Again, maybe because of the MSU. So he won his games, but he didn't get the kills that he needed.
But that also, I mean, that opens up a interesting thing: is which missions is it actually viable in? And I know we're jumping ahead in terms of the plan that we have, but I think this is the perfect time to talk about it, because I would gladly play an MSU list in any game involving capturing any type of point.
Okay.
But I would hate playing it in any type of kill point scenario. Definitely, because even though I might kill a lot of hits by pinning it out and then being able to move up with my tools and breaking it, I'm willing to lose half my list to win, but losing half my list in kill points probably means I've lost.
Then you've lost, yeah. So that is one of the main issues with MSU lists, that in kill point scenarios you will lose a lot of points.
Yeah.
So what do you do going into a kill point scenario when you're at a tournament?
Oh, you hide. You find cover and you hide, which might be really difficult at WTC because their tables have notoriously slim pickings of terrain.
Yeah.
But you have to play extremely passive.
Yeah.
You have to wait until they push and then use your other tools to try and punish him for getting too close.
Yeah.
But you can't be aggressive with 2-man or 3-man teams.
No.
They will get steamrolled.
With your WTC list, you could actually just sit back and hope that the multi-launcher hits something and just push that every single turn.
Theoretically, yes, but
theoretically, maybe
it got pinned out every single game.
Yeah, well,
yeah. No, but my list was actually extremely defensive. It might seem like with Flamers in Dodge trucks and Bazooka in a Jeep that it's an aggressive list, and with a 9+ armor tank.
That's
not at
really
all,
deceptive.
because the tank doesn't want to get close to anything. It's fine sitting on the back line.
Yep.
Shooting its howitzer. The Flamers are really vulnerable once they actually deploy out of the truck.
They're more of a counter-strike unit than a real offensive unit, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was using that, and I think I did it fairly well in actually most missions. I still lost a couple, but it was sitting and waiting with my Dodge truck around the corner, behind a building, behind a forest.
Yeah.
So they know that if they get within 24 inches of me, they will be barbecued.
Yeah.
Possibly.
They didn't know. They don't know I roll ones. The rush, but it's always that, right? Because that's a psychological game as well. That's really interesting. What about placement missions, sectors, or envelopment, the double envelopment? What do you think about them?
Let's do sectors because the thing for me there's a big difference in those two.
Okay.
Sectors is one, and double envelopment is another. And I think the MSU list do differently in those two. In my opinion, sectors is a really strong mission for an MSU list because you can completely flood his backline. He won't be able to stop you. Yes, he might kill 5-6 dice and get those 5-6 points, but every unit of 2 or 3 men that ends up is either in his neutral or in his deployment zone is worth so much more.
Yeah. So sectors is a good one. What about the other two?
If you are playing defensively in the envelopment, he will never get near you. You can completely pin him out, and you can make sure that you have the strategic tools placed in the any opening that might be towards your own backline.
Yeah.
But in double envelopment, you will probably struggle to get those envelopment points.
Yeah.
And you should definitely go for a different type of game. You should run it, as you've said yourself in many of your videos, you should run it as a kill point scenario. Yeah,
I think you should, because and then you're
if you try to
playing really defensively as an MSU army. So any sort of envelopment, I think you should play defensively if you're running MSU.
If you try to cross the board with that many dice, you will lose too many.
Yeah, you will lose too many because some of them will get killed on the way and some of them might not get out. Although you can get really lucky if you have the order dice control.
Yeah.
Load up one truck and just run it towards his back line. That can happen.
Definitely.
But it's not a sure thing.
Not at all.
No.
I actually tried that and failed.
Yeah. You got killed?
I did. I had the order dice control. I think I was 4 dice ahead because I've killed some of his.
Yeah.
And he got the first dice and I lost like 3 units.
Oh, yeah. And then you're behind all of a sudden.
I was, yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about some of the other. So we talked about the scenarios. What do you think are the main detriments that we see when we're running MSU? What's difficult to have?
What's difficult to have? You mean in terms of it's the ability to be able to have a unit that you know can move up and control the board and kill an enemy.
Yeah.
You will with an MSU list, your infantry will never kill anything as such.
No.
You might be lucky and whittle something down at the end with the use of your other tools, but the infantry unit itself will never do anything. It won't kill anything.
You're lacking the ability to actually push.
Completely and utterly.
Yeah.
You are reliant on your other things to do the pushing.
Is that even true
and break a hole?
Is that even true of your engineers in Dodges, that they lack the ability to push?
Yes. Because if you're running a unit with engineers in Dodges, you don't have necessarily the order dice control. You don't have that many order dice because it's 70 for an engineer unit, and it's 46 for a Dodge truck with an MMG.
Yeah,
you're not gonna have that many order dice. So yes, because as soon as you run that Dodge up, he'll focus fire it completely.
Yeah.
Because it's the single one point of threat. Whereas if you have this generic squad of men with weapons, which possibly if it's an American unit, 8 men with a BAR or 2, you have 10 shots. 10 shots can kill a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's 8 men. It can also charge a lot of things and kill a lot of things.
Yeah.
So it has the versatility.
Yeah.
That you completely lack if you go MSU. You don't have the versatility of your own infantry. You need to rely on your other tools.
Yeah.
Be it your mortars, your artillery, your sniper, your tanks, whatever you choose.
So MSU really can't push very well.
It's hard to punch a hole through the line.
Yeah.
You need to be able to do other things to get through.
And that also is a reflection of the killing power that MSU actually has. That's rather low as well, isn't it?
Yes. The straight up killiness, yes. With the right rolls, you might be able to be very killy, depending. I mean, a Dagger Steward or 2 Dagger Stewards might kill a lot.
Yeah.
But they are also they don't have proper backup.
No.
Because they don't have these versatile infantry units backing them up, moving forward with them as they advance.
So your few kill units, they need to be really good and self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient and also be played rather defensively.
Yeah.
You can't be you can't afford to run up a Steward across to the middle of the table to kill one of the enemy units because suddenly he has no backup. That tank is now on his own.
Yeah.
And a Steward on his own is a dead
tank
Steward.
on its own is never good. That usually dies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If not to a Panzerfaust, then to a rogue flamer in a Jeep.
Exactly, or straight up a group of veterans charging it.
Yeah. There's also something that it's not every selector you can actually run, and you're sort of limited to what you can run in many if you're running theater selectors. And do this, right?
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think there's like maybe one per few nations that can do it. I know the Americans have one that's really strong, and that's the one Anders Skerfeldt actually used when the game you talked about. You played again.
And the Brits have the SAS.
The Brits have the SAS, which I also think is really, really strong because you can put them in jeeps. So you can have, I think the SAS can have 4-man. So it's a 4-man veteran group, which is really strong in my opinion. And you can put them in a jeep. It's a 4-man jeep. It's insane.
Actually, even better, that jeep gets equipped with
not one,
MGs. So
not 2, 3 MMGs. And when everybody exits, it doesn't count as a normal transport. It becomes an MMG jeep.
Yeah. So there are certain theater selectors that are really good at this, but there are also some
Japanese can't. I mean, they if you run a generic platoon where you allow units from selectors, Japanese are really strong in making MSU or hordes also, but there's no good selector to do that at all.
No,
you can't. There's no selector to run a full like 10 squads of bamboo fighters, anything.
Yeah. So you also really you need the right sort of backup for your MSU units, right? At the same time, so it becomes rather difficult if you're running theater selectors. I think you should mostly focus on other stuff. But as always with theater selectors, it's really a question of figuring out what this one selector can do well. better than other selectors, and then running that, right?
Yeah, and Japanese hurt if it's theaters only. They have no possibility of doing that in a good way.
No.
Unfortunately, I think the Germans do, though.
Yes,
They actually have some insanely good MSU lists if you go
Yes.
selectors.
Yes. Especially if you're running like LMG teams, for instance, like 3 of those, and you can do lots of interesting stuff with that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And they get all the fun tools as well.
So here at the end, how did you do with your MSU at the WTC?
I won 3, lost 2, and tied 1.
You won 3, lost 2, tied 1. That is pretty good for someone who is just like 1 year into bold action. Congratulations so much. I am really happy that I have been training you and you're on the Danish team. That was brilliant. Is there anything we missed saying?
Yes. There's a few things actually. I know that we've gone for an hour, but I think this topic can bear a little more talk.
Okay.
We haven't talked about the ability to close combat.
Oh, that's right.
And I think this is a topic that I mean, it's one of your favorite things to do is close combat. I know.
Oh, I love the close combat. Yeah.
But how do you feel close combating against 10 two-man units?
I feel it's a waste.
Exactly.
It is a waste because most close combat units, you're designing close combat units in order to take on larger units than themselves and kill those. So you're designing lancers, you're designing fanatics, you're designing tough fighters, you're designing Gurkhas, something that has all the special rules that you need in order to win a close combat with something that's actually stronger than yourself. When you're charting two-man units, you're wasting time.
Yeah, and you only have 6 rounds to do this.
You only have
the
6
first
rounds.
round you can reach them. Second round,
there's
possibly
nothing
not
happening
even.
first. Second, not. Maybe third, maybe 4, and after that, you're basically so shot up that you're not charging anything anyway. So you have like 2, maybe 3 rounds of good charging. So I hate wasting that charge on small teams. I hate it.
What if I tell you that the two-man team also has escape move?
Yes, then it becomes even worse, because that was what I played against with Anders.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And Anders, it was the final of the Danish Nationals, and he was running his MSU. I was running Gurkhas, and I could not lock him down. And every time I charged something, I could maybe kill 1 unit if I could catch up to it, or I could shoot it with a steward or whatever, and that was fine. But what happened was all his units would shoot at my Gurkhas, and I would just start losing 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, and all of a sudden I had no unit left, or at least they were pinned out of their mines. They couldn't charge anymore. So that was really rough, and that escape move saved his ass time and again because I couldn't lock him down.
No. So why did it end up a draw then? Because you couldn't lock him down, he couldn't kill you off.
It ended up a draw because he made some mistakes with his support units, the ones that you so cleverly talked about. He had some support units and he pushed them too far ahead, which I punished heavily. And then I got in and actually caught up with a few of his teams, but then the Gurkhas that had caught up with them got shot to bits. So it ended up a 2-1 draw. 2-2. I had killed 2 of his. He had killed 1 of mine. So nothing much happening for a whole game, but it was really intense nonetheless because I had so many chances of actually shooting stuff. But his veterans going down in cover or making the escape move, really difficult to kill.
Yeah.
But
I think it also underlines the necessity of playing defensively as with an MSU list.
Yes.
Because if you ever get caught, you die.
Yes, you do.
There's no way around it.
And that was it. As soon as he had pushed up almost to the center line, I knew that I had those units because they couldn't retreat fast enough.
No, exactly.
And those were the units that he lost. So yeah. And close combat, I don't think you should do close combat with MSU at all.
Never.
If you could avoid it, you should play defensively and you should draw the close combat down towards you.
Yeah.
Killing
pins
them
and
as
ambush.
they come. Pinch and ambush. Yeah. So that was the close combat. You have one more?
Yeah. So and I think this actually warrants a video in and of itself. But I
man.
I think I'm not sure you should talk to me about it. But anybody.
Somebody.
Terrain.
Yes.
The necessity of terrain. Generally in the game, but especially for an MSU list. One of the tables at WTC was so open. It was I forget the number of the table. It's the one that only had cliffs.
Oh yeah,
it was impossibly hard to play on as an MSU. Yes, you can play defensively, but there's so little to hide behind that if you start stewing together your groups behind these things, you also don't really have the opportunity to shoot because there's no forests to stand in. There's no ruins to stand in. There's no walls to stand behind. It was so very.
So what
do
you think you need with MSU? Do you need those linear obstacles? Do you need walls and buildings? And what are you looking for?
I'm looking for at least 50% of the map to be covered in some kind of terrain. And if you put together all those rocks, I think maybe a fourth of the map was covered in terrain. And it needs to be a mixture. And I think you actually have a video on it in terms of how to build a table. And I really like that video because it talks about you don't necessarily need a like that looks the same on both ends. No. You just need variety across the table.
Yeah, and a sort of balance-ish, so that one side doesn't become like completely overloaded, whereas the other side is open.
No.
So you need some sort of balance, but it doesn't need to be the same.
No, it doesn't need. Mirror maps are always weird.
Yeah.
We don't want mirror maps, but we want. If he has a ruin, you need maybe not a ruin, but then you need a house. You need something to balance it out, right?
Yeah.
So
would you knowing how open the tables can be at a tournament, would you bring MSUs again?
Yes. Yes. Because
you think it's it does work.
I mean, yes, I lost 2 games. One of them I lost because I didn't get turn 7. I would have drawn that one. It was actually against Achilles.
Yeah.
I would have drawn that one had I had turn 7.
Yeah.
It was a kill point scenario. He killed 3 of mine. I killed 1 of his. I had one of his on 8 pins.
Oh.
If I had turn 7, I would have drawn because I would have gotten that one, and there was nothing he could kill on mine.
No.
Yeah.
So you still think that the MSU can work competitively and that you can make it work?
Yes. I will. I mean, there will be scenarios where I feel completely
tables.
Scenarios and the scenario and table combo where I feel boned.
Yeah.
If I ever get to play on such an open table again where I have to capture points, I will be so boned because I won't be able to advance up without stuff getting hit in open terrain. Ludicrous. It was hard.
It was hard. Yeah. And especially against a good player as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. David.
That was it. Yeah. And please do a terrain meta talk with someone who knows more about terrain than I do.
I'll figure out who to talk to there. Maybe I'll talk to Manuel or one of the Spanish guys and see what they think about that. Right. Thank you so much for today, David. And that was our talk about MSU.
Yes.
So.
Thank you so much.